at first I took lessons with just the general public, and then I found that the GIs on the Bill of Rights were having a much more serious course down in the basement. And it started at 7 in the morning and went on to about 12:30 or so. We had a wonderful old chef, Max Bugnard, who was then in his 70s, and just a marvelous cook. He had actually cooked with Escoffier. He had started in when he was 12, Bugnard had. And he was on the transatlantic ships and had done all of the things that you're supposed to do. Then he had his own little restaurant in Belgium, and during World War II, being a Frenchman, he had to flee when Belgium was occupied. And then he was too old to go on in the restaurant afterwards, so he started cooking at the Cordon Bleu. And I was awfully lucky to have him because he was brought up in the old classical tradition, so I was able to study and cook with him in that fine classical way. And I still think that the classical ways of teaching are the best because the French cuisine is the one that has all the rules, and if you know how to cook in the classical way, then you can do anything else at all. And that's what I tried to point out in my new book, is that although food has changed, I mean, ideas of food have changed, the principles of good cooking have remained the same. And of course, since those wonderful halcyon days, we've gone through so much more in the way of cuisine, like after about the 70s when Nouvelle cuisine came in. So everything arranged like a fan on the plate. You could feel that they're in the kitchen doing their thumb and finger. Finger food is what I want to call it. And after that came cuisine master or diet cooking, and everybody mixed up Nouvelle with diet cooking. But that was, I think, extremely good when it was done by a master chef like Michel Guérard, but it was disastrous done by someone who was trying to do it but hadn't had the background. Cholesterol has reared its ugly head. And I think there's so much misinformation and fear of food nowadays that we don't get out of this miserable era, this is going to be the death of gastronomy. Because we're just in an era where we have marvelous wines, we're really world-class wine. Is Florida making wines too? Because I think every state in the union is. But it's amazing to think that in less than 25 years, what progress we've made with wine. And certainly our food is remarkable. What one can get in an ordinary supermarket now. When I first came back from France in 1959 or 60, you couldn't get shallots, they didn't have any leeks, and really the quality left much to be desired. And now we have everything you can think of, including wonderful cheeses. So I think it's time that we got better informed about our food and what we can eat and enjoy. For instance, you're supposed to have 25 to 30% fat in your calories and your diet. And some people are so afraid that they won't touch any butter or oil, or they'll only eat that other spread that begins with M. Which I have skillfully avoided all the time. When I came on the television, there were no cooking shows at all at that time. When it started out, there was Dione Lucas. I don't know whether any of you are of the era that would have remembered her. She was an English woman who was a specialty in French cuisine, marvelous technician, and she was the first American TV cook. And then when I happened to come on, there was nothing else. And at that point, the Kennedys were in the White House, and they had their wonderful French chef, René Verdon, and French cooking was in. And I think that, and I was lucky to be the first.
Well, I think you gave it so much confidence in the kitchen also. You always seem so relaxed. Are you really relaxed like that?
I'm a ham. teaching and demonstration, so that didn't bother me.
When you were talking about that first meal in France, I wondered about what your most memorable meal was ever.
Well, the people are always asking me that question. I always think it's the one I've just eaten.
After spending the day with you, or this morning and last night, you're so filled with energy. How do you remain so energetic?
Always eating good food. Like, I come from a good old pioneer background, as my grandfather, who came from Illinois. He was banking and farming back in a little town back there. And when he was a kid, he went out with his cousins on the covered wagon out to California, and he never forgot that. And when he came back and finally retired at 65, he moved out to Pasadena and lived to be 93. So I'm very glad that I have that background. Professional, well, luckily we have lots of good schools, and I understand that you have it is at the Florida International University.
Yes.
I've heard about that. I'm very anxious to visit it.
And also Miami Dade Community College has a very good program.
If you're very much interested in French cooking and want to go to New York, there's a very fine school called the French Culinary Institute, where it's 2 years of just solid classical cooking, and it's very, very good. They've placed their students in some of the best New York restaurants, like Le Bernardin and the Le Cirque and so forth. Then, of course, there's the CIA in Hyde Park, which is becoming, I have a feeling, more partly cooking and partly administration. But I think if you're interested in just the culinary end of it, 2 years is hardly enough, because it's really a 10-year discipline. And I think that you should be purely culinary, and then you can do administration afterwards.
I see. If you were to give us one piece of advice to a beginning cook, what would you tell them?
Well, to take it seriously and to try and cook with other people, cook with some of the best people you can find, and get. I just keep cooking, I think. But I think try and find people to cook with who know a lot about it. That's the old apprentice system, and one of the best. And then learn the fundamentals. Learn how to handle a knife. Learn how to do the dog work quickly, like all the chopping and peeling and so forth.
I attended a seminar on the future of food, and they spoke about the microwave knocking out the kind of cooking we do today by the year of 2000, that cooking will no longer be done in a conventional way. What do you think about this?
Well, I think it depends on, and I don't think that's true. So I think people who really love to eat and love to cook, the microwave, you're not really participating in anything. There aren't any nice smells in the kitchen. And I think we must always remember that it was invented for heating up frozen TV dinners. And I think they've tried to make it do everything, and it certainly does some things very well. I cooked an artichoke in it, one artichoke the other day, and it turned out to be very well. But if you have 2 or 3, you might just as well have done it in the conventional way. Also, I like to look at it and feel it and smell it and stir it and poke it, and you can't do that in the microwave.